Next up is Village Properties Realtor David Charles Allen. He's at Village Properties and host of The Hop, that's Home Ownership Podcast.
Welcome to The Hop. This is David Charles Allen, Realtor at Village Properties in Santa Barbara, California, with my great friend and co-host, Patti Teal. I'm doing wonderful today. Patti, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great too, David. The weather here in Florida is really wonderful. It's the time of year that I guess people like to come here, though it's a little crowded, but it's getting up to maybe 80 degrees or the high 70s, cooler in the morning and the evening. So this is when the good weather happens.
I love it. We got a wide range of weather here ourselves as well. Looking at in the 60s some days in the high 50s, and then even one day in the 70s. So we may even get some rain coming up.
That sounds wonderful.
Yes, it does. And then there's been some surf out there. It's been pretty consistent. Not anything great recently, but there's definitely been some fun days to be had out there.
Oh, good. As long as it's good enough to go catch some waves and have some fun.
Yeah, as long as you're out in the water, that's usually the most enjoyable part. So in terms of how interest rates have performed, we're at 5.25 for 30-year jumbo and 5.875 for 30-year conforming. So again, a slight move back up since last week. Nothing major, but sometimes those little increases matter when you're talking about bottom line and monthly savings.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then in terms of how the statistics have performed, we have 31 new listings, 3 price changes, 14 that closed, 27 that went pending, 2 back on market, and 2 that were coming soon. So again, not a huge buildup of the supply, almost even in terms of new listings and pendings, but getting into the 30s, it's great. We kind of stuck in the 20s and the teens for quite a long time. So even being up in the 30s is nice.
Yeah, that is more hopeful, isn't it?
It is. More homes, more opportunities for buyers. Not the best for sellers, but it's still a great market in terms of selling your home if you price it right and you make it desirable.
Yeah. Is there a certain area, David, where most of the new listings are coming, or is it just kind of spread out?
It's not really defined because we're not having so many listings. It's really just spread out throughout the whole city.
Kind of
Santa Barbara, Goleta, everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And has the San Ynez area, Solvang, Los Olivos, has that area become more popular as well? Although it's gone up, it's still a little lower than Santa Barbara, I believe.
Yeah, that became super desirable as well. People were expanding their range to those kind of areas. And some people were looking for that more of a ranchy kind of feel to it. So it definitely saw a big increase too.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area. Just you're a little further from the ocean. That's the one downside.
You're a little further from the ocean, but you're saving some money every month. And it's beautiful up there as well.
It is beautiful. More rural feeling.
Exactly. Any question of the day for me?
Yes, we got an article from a listener, and it's one about asking people to include their furniture when they're buying your home. They especially talked about the supply chain issues made ordering furniture a lengthy process and how it has become more popular. And I wanted to get your take on that.
It's really going to come down to the situation between the buyer and the seller. The buyer wants all the furniture and maybe the seller is moving across the country and it'll be cheaper for them to just buy new furniture than getting it shipped. It really depends on how expensive the furniture is and how good you're writing a deal. It's kind of like all part of a negotiation. You see it a lot where people are willing to give up certain things because they don't want to move it or they may not have space for it in their new house. A lot of the times buyers don't want the old furniture. It's a rare occasion where a buyer walks in and says, I want everything in this house. And that's usually when it's staged.
Oh, yeah. Well, it did talk about staging. I'm glad you mentioned that in this article, too. It said that people are offering to buy the staged furniture. Of course, that can be a little bit of a dilemma for the person who staged it or the company that staged it because they need it for the next house. But I guess some companies are offering to rent it to the person who's buying the house for, say, a year.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, stagers definitely sell their stuff all the time, but you're usually paying pretty good price for that as well. But I think that's the most happening situations is where a house is staged, it looks beautiful, and someone comes in and says, I just want to take everything and move right in. So someone's own furniture, it's really hard to have someone you're going to share a style with. Usually stagers do a good job of kind of casting a wide net in terms of the styling they use. And then a lot of times people that own the home, they personalize it the way they want. And the next person doesn't see that as a valuable thing, or they may not like the style they're using.
Right. So anyway, the article also gave some warnings, and some of them were kind of funny. They talked about the couch that breaks the deal, and it made me remember one time we put an offer in on a house in Innisbrook and Montecito, and my husband asked for the refrigerator, which was not going to be included. And it ended up somebody else came in and got the house instead of us because of that refrigerator.
It's tricky. It really depends. You have to be able to read the situation and be able to assess, like, is having an extra refrigerator or this couch worth it to make this deal go through? And most situations, you want to be able to get the deal done, but it just depends on what kind of market it is. If it's a seller's buyer's market, if it was the last couple of years and you wanted to include all the stuff and didn't want to pay for more for it, they would just not even look at your offer. They want someone that's
Yeah. And one of the realtors in the article said that you should do the property deal separately from the furniture negotiations. But that seems like that could get tricky too. I don't know. As you said, it probably has to be on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, it really depends how expensive the furniture is. And then you're kind of getting into a different set of liabilities in terms of selling furniture on the side. And it just depends. Like, there could be a situation where you say, hey, I'll buy the house for this and I'll pay 50 grand for the furniture on the side. Then that person doesn't have to pay capital gains on the 50 grand because they didn't sell it in the house. But then it could be looked at as you're trying to evade your taxes or some sort like that. So then it just gets into the litigious side of things. If you want to do it, be my guest, but I wouldn't want to get involved with something like that. It's a little too more complicated and a little too many things can go wrong.
Right. Well, as you're talking about it, I'm thinking, boy, that is complicated. And I think what the article also mentioned, it was a good point. Sometimes what the buyer is trying to get is the lifestyle, even more so than the furniture. They told stories about them wanting a couple pet cows included. And then there was another offer from a buyer where they wanted the dogs, the Jack Russells included. Don't let our dogs hear that. They are definitely not for sale.
It's crazy how that happens. One of the last houses I sold, the rabbits were actually included. So yeah, they had this really sweet setup in the backyard, and the place they were moving to didn't have quite the right amount of space for it. They could have made it work, but they're like, hey, if you want the rabbits, we can keep them. And luckily the person buying it was a huge animal person. It was like, yeah, of course I'll take the rabbits. Like, of course.
Wow. Wow. That is really funny. And I guess you just have to take it on a case-by-case basis. So that's a good story, David.
It's all just situational.
Yeah. So, David, how are your fur babies doing? Speaking of animals.
Everyone's doing really great. We went up to Lizard's Mouth the other day and did a bunch of rock hiking, and the dogs were loving it, running all over the place. So it's a little scary up there sometimes because there's huge cliffs, but they made it work.
Yeah. Oh, I used to love hiking with Ollie in Sedona off leash. That was just so much fun. In Santa Barbara with my previous two dogs, it was just the best to go hiking with my dogs. I loved it. But there, are some perils, rattlesnakes and creatures that you have to look out for.
In the most sense, though, you're going to have a good time. We just have to watch out.
Great time. Yeah. I was just noticing when I took my dog to the park this morning, I went with my daughter's dog, Tuffy. And Tuffy is sometimes not very friendly with other dogs. I don't know. I think he's trying to be protective of my daughter, and he starts barking. But then Ollie normally is really good. But when he's with Tuffy, he acts really like a ruffian too. So it's that pack mentality takes over.
Moose does that. He's picked up on some of Jasmine's really annoying qualities. And you're just like, God, Jasmine, what are you doing? And Jasmine can't help herself. That's just the way she is. So.
It's almost like a pack mentality, or almost, if you compare it to people, almost like a gang mentality, isn't it? Where normally people wouldn't act the way they do, but when they're in a group, they do.
It's 100% true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, David, thank you so much for all the great advice about whether to make your offer include furniture or the perils that are involved with it. And I want to make sure that people have your contact information if they're interested in buying or selling a home.
Yeah, my number is 805-617-9311. And my email is david@davidcharlesallen.com.
Well, David, you have a great week. You enjoy the surf and that beautiful weather that you're getting.
All right, Patty, you too. Let's give it a go next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.